Well, hello everyone. So happy you're here. And what I thought we would do is first have everyone go around and talk a little bit about, give your name, and then talk a little bit about your makerspace so that we can share who is doing what in this region. Then after that, I thought we could talk a little bit about some of the barriers about why there are not more makerspaces here. Because it seems like it took off, but then it seems like it's retracted a bit, but I could be wrong. But we only have till noon. So let's get started. Mike, would you like to go first? So you're on mute. So your name, what your makerspace is located, where you are, and then kind of what you all do.
Okay, so my name is Mike Yates. I'm on the island of Vashon, and I'm actually a bad first choice because I only aspire to get involved with a makerspace. I actually have a meeting with Neil on the 19th to try and get that in motion. But we have a little nonprofit on the island to produce biochar, and we would like use of space and would like to contribute to that space. So that's where I am.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Well, I will put that in the Jam board. Neil, let's have you go next, since Neil is also on Vashon.
Right. So am I still off mute? You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Yep. So I've been, currently I'm president of the Vashon Tool Library, and we've been working for a few years now on trying to get a makerspace established. And we've sort of gotten that rock and hard place situation where we are trying to confirm that we are really rendering something that the community wanted. And after visiting the incredible place over on Bainbridge Island and saw the way they brought up their 25,000 square foot space, we determined that number one, we have to do something very Vashon-like. We're not Bainbridge. And number two, we were looking for individuals who were really driven to see a particular specialty realized. So we thought, you know, if somebody really wanted to make kites, and we had a person who was passionate about making kites, and they were willing to organize all the kite aspiring makers together, and we're willing to set up the classes and get all the professional aspects of it together, that we as an organization would support that. So we would put together the structure to find a place and a way, and if they would focus on their specialty. So whether it was woodworking, metalworking, fiber arts, ceramics, whatever. So we're trying to find individuals so as to not try to control it, but facilitate it, as it were. And so to that end, we've been working in, so that was started the conversation with Mike and a few others. So we know we've got some people who are experts in the woodworking arena, and we have some people who are extraordinarily able in the metalworking arena, and we have tools that have been given to us already, which the library sort of had to squirrel away because they weren't for rental items, but things we hope to be a future makerspace item. So what we've been trying to do is sort of step into this a little bit at a time, find people who are incredible advocates for their given arena, make sure we have sufficient end users for that given idea, and then see what we can do about securing a space to do that. And then the next hurdle I think we need to cross over is for us to determine the right economic model, whether that winds up being pay per use or whether it winds up being memberships. And how do we respond? So the tool library for us is a not-for-profit, and we say that anyone can join as long as they're willing to sign the hold harmless agreements. And we hope they make donations because we still live in a capitalist world. We pay rent, we pay for insurance, we pay for repairs, we pay for supplies. And so on the makerspace side, we're trying to determine how do we correctly accommodate those with means and those without means, deliver a good product, and also be able to, when need be, pay for instructors. And so we're still trying to figure out the calculus around bringing all those things to bear in the most able way. And we determined in all likelihood, it's going to be a combination of contributions, grants, probably some aspect of fees, and public and community support. And so we're trying to figure out the metrics around that currently. And so that's sort of been the hurdle for us, as it were, to get to the next stage.
Okay, cool. Okay, we'll get back to your hurdle after we go through everybody.
Yeah.
Steve, are you also with Neil and Mike?
Yeah, another Vashon guy.
Okay.
Makerspace wannabe. I've spoken with Neil a couple of times. I've set up a couple of small manufacturing shops over the years. Ran my own. Was involved running my own industrial repair business for a number of years. So I have some idea of how economically daunting this is and how daunting the organization of it can be. But as a goal, I support it extremely strongly. And I figured one way to wade back into this was to join this conference. And nice to see you here, Neil. I certainly expected. Mike, nice to meet you. And I figured the best way to get into it was to meet some more people and wade in. So, hi, everybody.
Cool. Perfect. Okay, Alicia, am I pronouncing that right? Why don't you go next and say a little bit about what it looks like you might work for the city of Portland?
Yeah, it's Alicia Polachuk. Hi, everybody. I won't take up too much time because I'm here to listen. The city always seems to be in the place where I actually get to work on reuse and repair for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And I've been part of Repair PDX since it started in 2013. But space continues to come up, and the city often wants to just figure out, like, how do we play a role? Are we we have a different economic development arm at the city, of course, and kind of what is our role around waste reduction? That's the area I'm coming from. And in Portland, we've seen a lot of maker spaces come and go. And, just trying to figure out how to connect the dots and just hear what other people are doing. And if you have any, from your perspective, are you getting funds from a city or a county and government agency and how that's been working? So.
Alicia,
Okay, cool.
can I ask, do you know who your counterparts are in our greater area in the Seattle and environs?
No, not around maker spaces. No.
Yeah.
Well, Neil, we're going to have Veronica in a moment, who's with Seattle. So you'll at least get a Seattle perspective in a second. Derek, I'm going to have you go last, since you are also one of our plenary speakers and also know an awful lot about this stuff. So we'll have you go last. Adam, why don't you introduce yourself? You're, I know, super new up to all this.
My name's Adam. I'm an intern with Zero Waste Washington. Don't really know much about makerspaces at all, other than some experience just in high school and at college. I've been lucky enough to go to schools that offer a lot of opportunities and have a lot of resources to allow students to kind of create things and have a space to work on projects and stuff. Personally, I haven't taken part in those as much, but yeah, I'm excited to learn a little bit more about what y'all are doing, and especially outside of the setting of a school and more in a larger community. So yeah.
Cool, great. Okay, great. Is it Adriana? Am I pronouncing that right?
Hi, I'm Adriana Santiago, and I'm in Port Townsend, and I am also part of Local 2020. I was a part of a Repair Cafe event last year, and I'm an artist, and so I've been involved in a lot of that style of maker space. I use waste and in my artwork, so I see a connection there, but also here to listen and learn.
Okay, very cool. And I'm putting all your names in as best I can as you all are talking. Okay, let's see. Let us go to Jeremy, and then we're going to go to, and I see two different Seattle makers. Is that you, Jeremy, twice, or is that someone else who's the Seattle makers? You're twice. Okay, great.
As well. So I'm trying to
okay, great.
Stay a part of the conversation as much as I can.
Okay, perfect. And then we're going to, good job. Yeah, good. So you're doing your job and you're being in the conference. And then Veronica after that. So Jeremy?
Sure. I have a bit of an echo. I don't know if it's a mute, or if you could mute yourself maybe.
I'll mute myself.
Okay, is it better? No. All right, I'll just take these
on
off.
On our end, we don't hear the echo, so it may just be on your end.
Okay. Maybe it's my double setup.
Okay, can you hear me now? All right, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm Jeremy Hansen. I'm one of the founders of Seattle Makers. I was an original member at 3 or 4 other makerspaces in Seattle, fell in love with them, and they closed down. So I've been, studying this issue. I'm thrilled to be a part of this conversation, looking at like why makerspaces don't work. I ended up quitting my job and jumping in with all my savings and learned quite a few things in that direction. But yeah, we identified a lot of areas that worked and didn't work, from burnout to building big teams, organizational structures. So I'd be happy to have a whole recurring thing on this for anybody, especially Vashon. One of our volunteers is from Vashon, another one's from Port Townsend. So I'm excited to just connect with like-minded individuals, and especially people who are interested in leading this sort of organization, because we have a lot of 4-hour-a-week volunteers, and we also identify a lot of roles that require a bit more knowledge of the community and just regular interaction to keep a space like this going. But yeah, this is actually our space. We got sewing over there, electronics bench, and then in the other rooms back here we have wood shop, 2 lasers, like 6 3D printers, and we have a growing community of about 68 people. So 68 members and about 14 volunteers. So yeah, excited to be here. Excited to meet all you guys.
Cool, great, wonderful. Okay, Veronica.
Hi, everybody. I'm Veronica with Seattle Public Utilities, and I work on waste prevention. So we haven't really engaged in the makerspace from our side of things, so that's why I wanted to join this breakout session to learn more about what the community is doing or interested in doing, so I can understand how at the utility we can best support those community efforts.
Sounds like you would be interested in helping promote more makerspaces type concept.
Yeah, like, there's a lot out there, and we're not quite sure what the layout looks like right now to see where we can best engage. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's very nice of Jeremy, by the way. He is double dipping today. He's both here and doing his space. So Derek, I think you're the last one to talk about yourself at the moment. And then, as you all know, Derek is going to be doing a plenary after lunch on this sort of topic. So we don't want to verge too much into what you're going to do in your plenary, but please tell us what you think.
Sure. My name is Derek. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, not the Washington one, but I did spend a good chunk of my adult career in Seattle. So I'm pretty familiar with all the Seattle layout of makerspaces and tool libraries. So I actually have a question for Jeremy. Which makerspaces were you a part of?
Yeah, I was a member at, oh, that echo again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was a member at the Maker House and the Metrics.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was a volunteer with Eric down at Soto for 3 years. And I know you guys connected to set up that space.
Yep. Oh, very cool. So I'll talk a bit about my history more in my plenary session, so I won't get into that, but we are Maker Labs in Vancouver, and we're more of a corporate makerspace on the side of things. So we're less decidedly not a nonprofit and not volunteer run. So we're trying out that approach, and so far it's been more sustainable for us. So we've been around for 7 years, and it doesn't look like we're going anywhere fast. So we should be around for quite a bit longer.
That is great. Okay, well, why don't we, for our Jamboard, which I'm going to share with you all again so you can see where we're at on the Jamboard. Here is where we're at. So I've gotten people's names on here. Some of you add your own names. I'm adding in pink questions that people are asking. And so I'm wondering if we could add some more barrier type questions. What are things that are holding people back right now? and I'm going to let people popcorn in. So anyone want to throw out what are things that are holding you back right now? Nothing? Nothing's holding you back?
Staffing.
I'm curious about the Vashon Island Makerspace initiative. What is the population of Vashon?
Mike?
11,000. I understand.
And demographically, kind of what age, what do people do?
Hi, this is Neil. So we have about 11,000 people on the island. The average age is over 55. There is, it's construed as a bedroom community in some respects to downtown Seattle. So there's a PO boat, a passenger only boat that goes to downtown in a half an hour ride that takes people into the heart of the core of the big city. And there's also vehicle access to Tacoma, the Kitsap Peninsula to our west, and also directly into West Seattle to the east. So we have access to 3 different counties while being a mostly rural environment. So it's not uncommon to see horses. My neighbors have, a dozen llamas. So we have a lot of forested area and a lot of people who commute back and forth to downtown Seattle, or did pre-COVID times. The tool library has been in existence. I think Steve Graham, who's I don't think in this conversation, is probably, we've had about 6 or 7 years we've been in existence here. We've had about 1,100 members over time. Currently, we have about 250 or 300 what we would call active members, people who are regularly using the tool library, and currently have about 1,500 tools at the tool library. The Makerspace is the legal entity that holds both Makerspace, holds the both tool library as one operating entity, and also the Vashon Fix-It events, which is another operating entity inside our overall not-for-profit, a 501c3 that we operate here. And I'm currently the president of the board. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, that gives a lot of context. Thanks.
Yeah. And so, we've been trying to get this started because we thought, along with just sharing tools, that we as a community had a responsibility to sort of share skills, because so many people have retired out to Vashon. We have an extraordinary level of ability, all kinds of master artists. It's a huge artist community. So we've got a very strong constituency of people with skills. Granted, not all artists want to share. I mean, they may be willing to share their art, but they're not necessarily interested in having somebody come in and work in their studio. And so the crossover there for us is to try to get those people to come over and be master educators, along with just sharing what they do.
Hey, Derek, can you explain what a corporate makerspace is? You used that term a minute ago, and that's why I put it in a pink post-it, because I'm not sure what that means. What does that mean to be a corporate makerspace?
So that's decidedly in opposition to a nonprofit makerspace.
So what does it mean, though? Like, what does it mean?
It just means we have full-time staff. We do full service fabrication. We are more like a gym in some sense of the word. But we don't rely on volunteers. We don't get grants. We are just, for the most part, another small business.
So you're kind of like what used to be when I was in because I'm a lot older than most of you all, or at least some of you all. What used to be like a machine shop. So it used to be that there were machine shops, and you could go, either there was a machine shop associated with a business or a school or something, but then there was also machine shops where anyone could just go and get something made if they need a sign or they need a weird door frame or things like that. So you're kind of like replacing what would have been in the old days a machine shop, in a way.
In a way,
but more fancy.
Probably about the same fanciness level. More that we allow people to use the tools as well, whereas traditionally wouldn't be able to go into a machine shop and learn how to use their tools.
Okay, got it.
A good section of our business is teaching people how to use the tools, and then they can actually use it themselves.
Oh, okay. So so it's like a gym, but you're basically able to use the machines. Yeah, got it. Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any thoughts or questions about that?
Yeah, I've found with fabrication that it's usually people coming who don't want to pay a fab shop, $5,000 and $100 an hour to do something.
Mhm.
They'd rather pay a makerspace and get a much lower cost. Are you priced the same way as like a traditional fab shop that takes on a project, or somewhere in between?
We're somewhere in between. So our experience with fab shops, and we also outsource a lot of our work to fab shops. We find that our turnarounds are much faster. So usually we complete our projects within 3 to 5 days, whereas most traditional fab shops will give you 3 to 5 week lead time. And they don't like touching smaller projects, whereas we are more than willing to do very, very small projects.
Wow. Okay. Faster than a fab shop. Okay, a fab shop being a
Are
fab.
there a lot that you say no to, I imagine?
We try to say yes to everything. That might be one of our advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
So we're a bit of a jack of all trades. We do woodworking, metalworking, CNC laser cutting, CNC routing, finishing. Whatever people are willing to pay us to do, we'll pretty much try to do, with the caveats that we aren't expert fabricators. So our rates are somewhere in between trying to do it yourself versus hiring a specialized fab shop for it.
Yeah, and that's critical. It's setting up that expectation up front. Like, this has never been done before. Like, we will do everything that we can, but we've had people be like, I paid you to do this. And you need to have that conversation up front.
Yeah.
So Derek, Derek, I've got a question. Where do you see sort of the division in your revenue between your prototyping work, as it were, versus your education and people coming, having the opportunity to come and sort of use your space to explore the experience versus you being a manufacturing place?
So I'll talk about this more in the next session, but it's about 2/3 the do-it-yourself membership studios, and then 1/3 fabrication.
Okay.
And the way that we've kind of set ourselves up is our rent and staff should be paid for by the membership in studios, and then fabrication is pretty much extra on top of that.
Okay, great. Yeah, we, as the nonprofit side, sort of one of the models that we've looked at, and I think it was mentioned in the first presentation, was the common experience you had if you were on a military base. Historically, they would often have a shop that somebody could go to. So someone who would be a master carpenter or a master woodworker or metal person would be there and supervise the experience and teach people how to do it. And then it just became a sort of like a gym in your apartment building where you could go and work out there. And if you needed knowledge and support, someone was there to do that. We would love to be able to create a model that sort of reflected that experience, that said we can have a place where people could come and learn it and then do it. So that, somewhere between gaining skills and gaining pleasure, hopefully not too much of either, but enough to make it a viable solution for the community and what the community is setting out to try to achieve.
Let us shift to another topic. So Alicia, I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. Someone asked, I'm not sure who, and maybe they can speak up, what are the pros and cons of combining a makerspace with a tool library and fixing events?
Well, for us, it was lots of the community. So we're doing all three because the tool library was the community needed the tool library. We saw that. The Fix-It events, in many respects, has sort of been a gift to the community. The people, they just eat it up. They love it. The ability to come over and both learn how to do the fixing, and for the people who are the fixers, they love doing the giving. So the local Eagles, for us, have given us a facility to work in repeatedly. They see it as part of their commitment, that an option to make that available. The community loves being able to come in, and the number of vacuums and lamps and sewing machines that get repaired is stunning every time we do it. And so everybody feels like they're getting, it's a win-win-win all the way around. the tool library and the makerspace have an affinity because they have the makers need many of the tools that are in the library. And the dilemma is we often have people coming into the library and saying, I have this requirement to do this. I always joke, you don't go to the hardware store looking for a project. You usually have a project and go to the hardware store. And when you get to the hardware store, you might often be asking for advice if you don't have experience on that. And so having been just retired for half a dozen years, I've learned to do many of these things. I didn't have a Steve Schlossman's inventory of knowledge or skills. And so it's been great to be able to go and talk to people who've done these things over time. And we naturally saw that that was another thing we could offer the community if we could find a way to manage the logistics to share information and skills and knowledge and pleasure. I mean, it's and we see that at the Fix It events when people see people fixing it. We're now having kids come in who want to learn how to do those things and say, oh, that's a cool thing. How'd you learn how to do that? Well, what do you do to do that? And so it's becoming that circular thing that we all aspire for to do, or many of us aspire for it to do.
Does anyone else, that's great. Does anyone else have comments on the pros or cons of combining a makerspace with a tool library or fixing events?
Yeah, so in Vancouver, we have the Vancouver Tool Library, and they were established before Maker Labs was. What we saw as a primary difference is that people use tool libraries to take tools home, to work on home projects, whereas makerspaces are places where you can use the tools, because a lot of homes don't let you bring a table saw home. The condos probably wouldn't like that, or your neighbors. So makerspaces kind of are places where the larger tools that you can't necessarily rent out and take away are used. So earlier on, we actually partnered with the tool library, and they had a satellite tool library at Maker Labs. But over time, we found that we're actually serving quite different customers.
Oh, you're serving. Okay, so what you're saying is you don't. It's because the question is a pro or con. You didn't really. You explained the difference, but it sounds like a con is that you're kind of serving different audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me clarify that in the notes here. Okay. Does anyone else have any comments on that? So this is going to be pro. The pro is it's a community. It's a community sense of community, and it's also easing. You have an ease of cross pollination between them. But a pro is, or rather a con is really that they're serving different audiences.
I have a quick follow-up, Derek, for you. This is Alicia. Are you open? Have you stayed open? Have you reopened with all the COVID stuff? Just curious about that. Looks like Jeremy's open, but I don't know what his Seattle.
Yes, we are open. So we opened back up. We closed mid-March, and then we opened back up mid-June.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go to another question. Alicia also asked, what about workforce development, job training? Any comments on the workforce development and job training aspects of makerspaces?
That's such a big thing to, again, COVID recovery.
Yeah.
The city of Portland is all over that. And I feel like we have a good case kind of to say, we need to be doing more of this training, and there's interest in job creation and that kind of stuff. So just curious.
So Derek, any success in that?
So we are not a certified school. So it's a little hard to get kind of accreditation or certification. We're more focused on building skills, but it doesn't come with any degree or paper certification, unfortunately. So people do use us to upskill, but so far we haven't really explored how that becomes more recognized. I know there's a makerspace in San Francisco called Human Made, and they're focusing a lot on just reskilling. And then in Vancouver, there's another social enterprise called Embers, and they focus kind of with below poverty line people and helping them reskill. So it's not really our focus. Our focus is more on teaching people the basic skills they need to use the tools to build whatever project.
Okay, got it. And I'm looking at the chat. It looks like, Derek, you had a chat about, now I'm not seeing it. You had a chat a moment ago, which I'm not seeing. Shoot. Maybe I can't read it very well when I'm doing facilitating. So I wanted to ask about maker spaces at schools, because I've gone around to different campuses, high schools and colleges, and I've seen this big sign that says makerspace. And I'm wondering if those are really just sort of more like, you know, kind of free form art places, or if they really are truly maker spaces. Has anyone had any experience with the maker spaces at different, you know, regular academic institutions?
The high school in Vashon has had some interaction with that, and they have tended to be, and many times when we've had conversations around the country with them, they have tended to be more on the technology focused and less on old school tools, as it were. So it wasn't metal and wood and ceramics. It was more chips and Raspberry Pi and programming and learning and robotics and things along those lines. Now, I don't want to say it by any stretch that that's universal, but when we've spoken with more of them around the country, the focus had frequently been more on that side than the vocational experience, than the vocational skills that we're talking about. And it's interesting. Well, first of all, it's interesting on one side because the tool library has so many volunteers, and a huge percent of them all come out of the tech industry. And one of the things we've heard from our community when we did public events, we had 100 and some odd people at a church when we asked the community to come talk to us about what they wanted, and a large percentage of them said, we want to get off the screens and do things with our hands. We're trying to do things with our kids and share an experience with them that isn't sitting in front of a screen. We want to be able to do, and even the ones that we talked about doing 3D printing and some of the technology stuff, they wanted to get the kids, the adults wanted to do things with their kids, but they wanted to get out of the bedroom and to another place so that they could do something together and use their hands to be project oriented. So that was sort of the kinds of feedback, which we thought was incredibly valuable for us in terms of goal sets. Unrealized yet, but goal sets.
Okay. That's interesting. So you're saying the schools would actually like to have more of the physical use of tools rather than the high-tech stuff? Or at least add that in, or add that in. I don't mean it in replacement, but in addition.
The community has said that.
The community said that.
The schools were doing the technology. The community said they wanted the hands-on.
I see. Okay. Does anyone else have any comments on that?
Yeah, so a lot of schools have actually reached out to Maker Labs, and we've helped them set up their maker spaces. Schools tend to be very liability adverse or risk adverse. So anything that is a potential danger is extremely frowned upon. So that's why the electronics and 3D printers and Raspberry Pis are a lot easier to get into. But we found that a lot of schools are adopting laser cutters as kind of a good middle ground. So laser cutters are computer controlled. So there's still a lot of the computer-based design aspects, but they cut things out much faster than a 3D printer would print things. And they can work with a lot of materials that are safe for kids to be around. So laser cutters are kind of the gateway for a lot of school maker spaces that don't have a full wood shop or an industrial program.
Okay, that's a really good point, and I didn't know that. But that makes a lot of sense. I'm putting that as a little note here. Anyone else have any comments more about school maker spaces before we move into a question of barriers?
I can also speak to that a little bit just from my own experience. I know at my university, the makerspace we have that's specifically like kind of designated as that is kind of more of an art space. And like there's lots of hands-on stuff like screen printing and that kind of stuff. But there are opportunities. So you can like, for people that want to, I think especially when you get out of high school, colleges are a little less risk adverse than high schools specifically. And if you seek out like woodworking and stuff, you can get access to other spaces. But for like the general spaces that are just open to the public, they usually wouldn't have dangerous tools or open to all students.
Hey guys, we're about to go back into the